So we have a lot of information today. So we've got the recording going. Let me start by introducing Ellen Ford. Ellen, would you like to kick us off this morning?
Sure, absolutely. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Ellen Ford. I'm the Deputy COO for the lab. And I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for the time. This is the first in a series of meetings that we'll be having for the lab community that will be all about for the future of work. So, as Diane said, these sessions will be recorded and we'll post them on the Future of Work website as well as the Way We Work website for future reference for those who either want to go back and look at it or didn't have an opportunity to call in this morning. There will also be an Elements article that will go out later this week specifically about this particular meeting. So this is our first session, and we're going to focus on tools available to help improve our ability to be able to work effectively with each other as we move to a future where we'll be balancing all four work modes on an ongoing basis with the community, with our laboratory community. So we've got several panelists who are ready to join us today, and they're going to walk you through various tools and answer questions for you. So we're going to start off with Adam Stone and Luis Corrales from IT, and they'll take us through technology that will help us in a hybrid environment. Then Melanie Alexander from EH&S has joined us, and she's going to review how the lab's ergonomic resources can help improve your experience when you're working in a hybrid mode. And then Aditi Chakravarti is our lab's chief diversity officer, and she's going to talk to us about how to how to hold inclusive meetings when you're working with people on using multiple forms of joining a meeting. And then finally, Joanna Martinez from Learning Development and HR will provide additional resources for all of us to be able to use while working in a hybrid environment. She's going to walk through a website with us as well. So without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to Adam and Luis.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. A little reflection on the technology tools. So, over the past 19 months, we've really learned a lot, I think, about distributed teams. We all have, from Zoom fatigue to experiments with placemaking and water cooler chats. We've seen a lot of experiments as teams try to find their new normal. At the same time, right, it's important to keep in mind that lots and lots of people at the laboratory were already part of some version of that new normal, from occasional teleworking to those who work on large international experiments. We did actually have a great deal of experience working in distributed teams long before the pandemic became part of our lives. But now, as more people return to the site, we're looking at a future with different work modes and different kinds of hybrids. We'll need to continue to learn and innovate and continue to experiment with tools to try to make those experiences work well. We should really give ourselves some space to learn here, right? And this is a time of incredible innovation and new ways of working. And teams will need to find their new normal by experimenting and finding different work modes and sort of finding their own stasis. But I wanted to, so what we'll do is I'm just going to show you a couple ways that that some new technology improvements that help with sort of the day-to-day of hybrid and remote teams. And then Luis is going to show you some specific innovations in conference rooms and real-time collaboration. So I wanted to start with something that may seem a little pedestrian, but the kinds of basic productivity improvements that that we maybe took for granted in the past. I'm going to share my calendar for a second and start on Google Calendar. So, in the past, when most perhaps people were at the laboratory, it was relatively easy to figure out who was where, right? It was clear when someone wasn't in the room or was out, and maybe you would see that in Google Calendar. But there are lots of new technologies now to help make clear what your presence is if you're part of a hybrid team or a distributed team. If you haven't seen these features yet right now, so this is a special kind of meeting at the top of my calendar that shows my location. And you can see I'm scheduled to be at home all this week. But if I decide to change that, I can say, oh, I'm going into the office on Wednesday. So I can choose home, office, and unspecified, but I can also write something else entirely here, like AM on-site, PM off-site. And so that's a very helpful thing to do when you start to schedule meetings for people. Before I show what that looks like to people who are scheduling, let me just point out that from settings, you may not see that feature on your calendar right now. Just click down into work hours and location, set your work location, which should be set automatically, enable both working hours and working location, and you'll see this map, which gives you the ability to set your default working hours, and then you can change that for any day. But heading back here, so once people start to use this, when you create an actual calendar event, I'm going to click on more options to do the whole one. I'm going to take the IT leadership team, which is a Google group, and add them to the event. So I've got 8 people in my room. And what you'll see is when I click find a time, I can easily see where everyone is at the top of my calendar. And as I scroll through the week, I can see what that information is, including what days Chris is in the office, who's going to be in the office on what day. That's very useful if you're trying to both understand sort of where people are, but also maybe you need to schedule meetings that actually require in-person, like safety walkarounds and things like that. So that's a nice new feature of presence. And there's another new feature in Calendar that you may not have seen yet, which is the ability to RSVP to meetings by demonstrating whether you're in a conference room or not. So this is this meeting, right? And I can show from the bottom here, in addition to my normal RSVP yes, I can also select yes from in a meeting room and yes for joining virtually, which helps to let the meeting host and other people in the meeting actually let you know where you are. So that's one new thing on Calendar. One thing that we found, for a lot of people at the laboratory is that we spend an incredible amount of time in meetings during pandemic, possibly because they're easier to schedule and that people wanted some connection, but people are spending an awful lot of time in meetings. If I click on these time insights and click more insights, you can get really deep into how you're spending your time on Calendar, which can be helpful when you're in virtual meetings all the time. You can see I'm spending 7.9 hours in one-on-ones, 14.8 in meetings with 3 guests. And then time in meetings over the course of multiple weeks, people I meet with frequently, not just the amount of time that I'm in with a one-on-one with them, but also the total amount of times I'm in meetings with them on any given day. Just a nice way to sort of see what's going on with how you're spending your time in Calendar. So let me share a similar thing about as we go into other products of another way to let your team sort of know where you are, and that's with your status. So your chat status is in the upper part of close this for a second. It's in the upper part of Gmail and other applications, and you can set that to automatic based on whether or not it sees you working. But you can also add a status like today I'm commuting and clear that status after 1 hour automatically, or I can just say out of office, etc. So other ways to sort of let your team know what's going on. Let me then move to other ways to sort of learn things about what's going on. I'm going to pull some messages from Luis here, and this is something that's sort of been around for a little while, but it's kind of an interesting thing to think about in the context of remote teams, and that is, we're starting to onboard people that you may not know in person, and you may not be able to even understand where they fit into the organization. Some of those things just become much harder with remote and distributed teams, and especially people who joined us who may never have been and may never will be on site. But one of the things that you can see when I click into an IT communications thread here, and I pull up contacts in this thread, and we should have been able to see from all contact. Well, I'll just go ahead and pull up Luis here. So pulling up Luis Corrales in my contacts, I can see contact details from him, but I can also now see his reporting chain, who his supervisor is and who his direct reports are, as well as recent interactions and work history. Soon you're going to be able to see work mode here as well, as indicated on Google Calendar, which we're looking forward to. And if I click deeper into Google Contacts into Luis, I can actually see a map of everyone above Luis in his management chain, as well as all of his direct reports and where they are. So just new interesting ways to get insight into the people that you're working with, especially in a sort of new mode. So before I turn it over to Luis, I did want to just draw your attention to the worktogether.lbl.gov site, which gives you insight into a lot of different collaboration tools, as well as updates on new things that we think are useful in terms of work modes and working with hybrid teams. And then I'm going to turn it over to Luis to talk about some of the work that we've been doing on conference rooms specifically, because we know that's a critical part of making people who are off the site feel like they're full participants in meetings. Over to you, Luis.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Luis Corrales. I'm the group lead for collaboration services, which also includes AV. IT over the past few months has set up a space here in Building 50 that we call the AV showroom to showcase some of the technologies that we are testing out and some of the technologies that have made that testing and now we're incorporating into conference rooms across the lab. First of all, I want to say that the lab as an institution, when we went into lockdown, was really well prepared to take on the technologies that we needed to be able to connect remotely to our colleagues in our meetings. As we move now into more of a hybrid environment, now we need to start contemplating how do we make it easier for the people who are working remotely, but also the people who are within the confines of a conference room. How do we make the hybrid experience more equal for everyone who's connecting? And based on those questions that we've been asking ourselves, we've identified some of the pain points that we've encountered when it comes to conference rooms. Pain points such as audio, right? Not being able to hear the person, not being able to be heard correctly. Video, right? What happens when all of a sudden you have to be distanced inside a conference room, but there's a camera at the front of the room showing the whole room, but you really can't, you have your mask, but you can't pick up on visual cues of the people who are sitting in that conference room. Then the other one is how do we collaborate, right? If you are in a conference room and you're doing some ideation or some brainstorming and using a whiteboard, you have an advantage, right? You write on that whiteboard. The people who are in that room can write on the whiteboard, but the people who are remote, if you're lucky, you can see the whiteboard from the camera, and then you rely on someone taking a picture of what was written on that whiteboard and sending it to you. So we're addressing those issues as well. And then finally, right? So how do we standardize the experience so that when you walk into a conference room, you can just walk in and start that meeting without having to figure out, did I bring the right dongle with me? Does the basket on the conference room have the right dongle for my computer? And then fiddling with remote controls to turn on the displays. So those are kind of like the pain points that we've identified. And we're trying to standardize the experience by incorporating Zoom rooms into conference rooms. Now, Zoom rooms, it's not something new to the lab, but it's something that we have been working with divisions that have requested the Zoom rooms, as well as some of the conference rooms that IT has also been upgrading. Over the past 2.5 years, we have upgraded over 70 conference rooms across the lab that include Zoom room technology. And what that means is if you walk into any of those conference rooms, you get an experience similar to what you see right here. You get a display that gives you the schedule for that day, for that conference room, as well as meeting controls to join the meeting, to share your screen. And if you're familiar with Zoom, and I assume everyone here is because we're in a Zoom meeting, this is the same interface, pretty much, right? So what you're looking at right now is a device called a Neat board. And I invite everyone to join us at go.ldl.gov/AV showroom. And Darren is going to type it in. Thank you, Darren. To see some of the other technology that, because of time restrictions, we can't show today. But I invite you to visit the website and also schedule some time to come and see the technologies that we have. So you walk into a conference room, you're faced with this, no more remotes, right? You just walk in and you click on start. Am I back? Yeah, okay. We had to mute there for a second because we have several microphones going on and we don't want any of that feedback. So that's how easy it is, right? And so this device is composed of a touch display. It's composed of an array of microphones and speakers, a really great 4K camera, and a controller. So the controller allows you to do all the things that you do within a Zoom meeting, like mute participants, see who's in the meeting, start recording, and directly from the touchpad that's sitting on the conference room table. Now, I mentioned that this device is a touch screen, which means that now we can just put aside that whiteboard that we have in conference rooms and use this device for whiteboarding. What does that give us? It means that not only the people who are in the conference room can participate in the brainstorming session, but also the people who are remote, because they will also be able to annotate on the whiteboard. This whiteboard, as you see it right now, is evolving. So Zoom has already announced that by next year, this whiteboard is going to be persistent, which means you can save it, you can come back to it afterwards, and it's going to include a lot more tools than what I'm giving you what I'm going to be showing you right now. So I'm going to start a whiteboarding session, and it's as easy as touching the screen and clicking on the whiteboard button. Now, if you would like to contribute to this whiteboard, I welcome you to join us by clicking on that view options at the top of your screen and then clicking on annotate. So the whiteboard gives us a few basic annotation features like pencil, like changing the color. So I'm going to write. It gives us smart shape features. So I'm not great at drawing circles, but it tries to figure it out and it draws a perfect circle. It also, I prefer night view because it allows me to read things better. And then you're not restricted to one whiteboard. So you can have up to 12 different whiteboards on the screen that you can work with. And this is number 2. Now, the great feature is at the end of the meeting, all of us can walk away with the annotations on the whiteboard. By clicking on share, I can select to send everyone just that main whiteboard. And I can email it, and then I can send it to everyone who is in this meeting. And then, so all right, let me close this. So that's the whiteboard. The annotation part of the Zoom rooms also extends to whatever content is being shared. So if you're sharing a document, if you're sharing a web page, you can use the same annotation features that the whiteboard has. So these are some of the things that we're doing with collaboration services. Sorry, with collaboration in meetings. The last feature I want to show you, and for that, I'm going to stop the whiteboard. Close. I'm going to switch the video so that we're getting video from this camera. So now you can see the other side of the screen, but as I move in this room, the camera is following me. So this is great because if you have a moving speaker, then that person is never out of frame. But the other great thing about this camera is that it has AI that identifies the humans in the room, the participants in the room, and it focuses on them. Why is this great? Because it allows us to pick up on visual cues on faces, right? If you have a camera at the front of the screen, you have somebody talking to the person next to them, you're barely gonna see their face. But with this, you see their face up close. So these are some of the other features that we're incorporating. We're also incorporating other accessibility features, like for instance, being able to walk into a Zoom room and using your voice, starting a meeting or joining a meeting. So this is how we're trying to bridge the gap between hybrid remote and on-site, and in addressing how do we live and meet in a hybrid environment. All right, thank you. Any questions, please put them in the chat.
I think that's it for IT, Ellen and Diane.
Well, thank you. That was great. And so we've put the links into chat here for anybody who needs to come see your Zoom room. That is really great. Thanks, Luis and Darren and Adam. All right, Melanie.
I'm on. Hi, everyone. Good morning. That's a hard act to follow. That was a fun show and tell. All I have to offer is I hope that you guys, during the Zoom call, especially if you're not needing to type and mouse, that you're moving around and changing your positions to practice good ergonomics, especially when you don't need to type and mouse. I'm going to spend the next few moments sharing with you some ergonomic resources, and many of these resources have been in place actually since last year, but I want to make sure that you know of all the latest and greatest. All right, so this is a screen capture of our ergonomics website. This is the homepage. This is kind of your one-stop shop for everything ergonomics. I'm just going to highlight a few resources that you might find valuable in keeping you comfortable and safe for your future of work. So the first thing I want to point out is that we have over 80 ergo advocates that are distributed throughout your divisions, and these are a great resource for you. They are aligned with your organization. They can help you with anything ergonomics. You can click on that list, find your division, and reach out to any of those people in your division for any ergonomic related assistance. Of course, we are always here to help you, the EHS ergonomics team, and you can always reach us at ergo@lbl.gov. We're happy to help you in anything. And the next resource that I wanted to point out to you are actually two different catalogs where you can obtain equipment and accessories for on-site and telework. I just need to point out that there's two different catalogs. One is for telework and one is for on-site purchases. So depending on where your hybrid work takes you, we have two different resources that you'll need to go to. And I'm going to highlight these a little bit further in just a moment. And then at any time, you can always request an ergonomic evaluation. Click on that button there and you enter a few questions, and that helps us to triage what your needs are. Currently, we're doing all of our ergonomic evaluations virtually, even for those of you that are on site. So we could really assist you in all of your work areas, whether it's telework, remote, on site. If you work in a lab, if you do material handling, we can support you in all of those work areas. So you can do that by just requesting an eval. And then I just wanted to peel a couple layers of this onion to kind of further expand on how you actually get things. So I hope by now that all of you have what you need to help improve your ergonomics situation wherever it is you're working. But I wanted to point out that eBuy is really a great resource if you haven't used it yet. We have resources for both on-site and telework. The item in green that I've kind of highlighted here, that's the portal that you go to be able to get things for telework, and you can get things drop shipped to your home via that catalog. And then everything else in eBuy is for when you're purchasing things for your on-site areas. And I put little purple boxes around the most common area, sources for ergonomic related items. And a lot of people don't know about this little mouse icon down here at the bottom. And this is a shortcut that takes you to the most commonly ordered ergonomic items. So you can order from many different vendors all at one time. So I hope that you'll take advantage of those resources. And then I hope that you've checked out the telework catalog. The lab has been very generous in making a lot of options available. And I just want to highlight a few of these resources. You just need your supervisor approval, and any of these items can be drop shipped to you. So a few things that I want you to be aware of is that the lab has 6 different chairs available for us to order for our telework situation. And you can always call upon the EHS Ergo team or your Ergo advocate if you're needing help in selecting the right chair. And we even have a helpful comparison chart that you can look at the different dimensions and specifications and features of each of these chairs kind of side by side. In addition to chairs, we also have 24 different types of categories of equipment and accessories. The most common ones selected are, of course, the chairs, headsets, footrests, monitors, webcams, but we have many other products, and you can click on the little chevron next to each of the items if you wanted to get a better description of how that item might help you for your telework situation. So happy to have all these resources available to you. I do want to just let you know that it's always good to check the eBuy catalog because these items vary. We try to monitor them on a daily, weekly basis. And some of these items have been impacted by the global supply chain issues that you may be hearing about in the news, but we're trying to do our best to make these products readily available. So thank you for your time and attention.
All right, thanks, Melanie. I think next up we have Aditi, who's with us from Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. Aditi, can we turn it over to you?
Yes, thank you, Ellen. Hello, everyone. It's really great to see all of your interest in learning how to design and facilitate collaborative meetings for hybrid and distributed teams. Let me start sharing. Just grateful that you're all here. What I'm going to talk about is I'd like to build on Adam Stone's opening remarks and contextualize some of the very cool technology that Luis, Darren, and Adam showed you through the lens of IDEA. So when we think logistically in terms of practically planning a meeting or where you have some attendees who are co-located, who are on site, and others who are in multiple locations around the state, country, or even the world, it's easy to see how these types of tools can really be a game changer for us. And it'll make it easier for us to plan and execute on these team meetings and team activities. But I also want to reinforce another huge value add that these tools offer. And we did sort of implicitly mention this earlier, but they have the potential to create a more level playing field for all meeting attendees, regardless of their work mode, in a way that was not possible before the pandemic, when we may not have had as much mindfulness about remote participation or accessibility for our colleagues with disabilities who are neurodivergent, or just for our colleagues who have different styles of communicating or showing up and contributing on their teams. So in other words, I want to echo what Adam said, this is a really great opportunity that we have in front of us to experiment with and create new norms on our teams that don't automatically, for instance, prioritize people who are on site or disadvantage people who are teleworking or remote or simply dialing in. So I wanted to just start by posing the question, why is it important? See if this goes. Why is it important for us to prioritize inclusion, diversity, equity when we plan collaboration meetings and team gatherings in a hybrid context? You can, of course, I invite you to put your answers into the chat. This is an invitation, but I'll offer, two answers. So one is that it increases the chances that we actualize our institutional value and desired outcome of team science, along with our other stewardship values, right, of trust, innovation, respect, and service. We know from extensive research for over 20 years at this point that the more diverse teams and organizations, the more that they produce innovative results or outputs. So examples are, greater number of patents, more products, more revenue. So when you're comparing a more diverse organization or team compared to a more homogeneous organization or team. And we see this across industries and fields, but these results are really conditional and dependent on whether those diverse perspectives are actually heard, valued, and respected. So this is a big reason why IDEA is obviously is important for us to think about and foreground when we shift into hybrid modes of collaboration. And then the second thing in terms of sort of the flip side of this, or why we want to prioritize IDEA as we're thinking about hybrid collaboration, is that it helps us mitigate barriers to team science. And a lot of those come in the forms of unconscious cognitive biases that we have that make it harder for some people on our teams to contribute their ideas and their expertise than others. And so I'll just name one as an example that's particularly salient as a bias when we're talking about hybrid collaboration that each of us needs to look out for, which is proximity bias or availability bias. That's our tendency to rely on available data just for, based on our experiences. And we often favor people with whom we have frequent proximity, physical proximity, or just in general, more interaction with. So I may assume a colleague of mine who I have frequent Zoom check-ins with, or who seems very visible and vocal in our Zoom virtual team meetings, is a better performer or contributor than a colleague who maybe I see less of and who is more quieter in those team meetings. And then this assumption will color who I decide to collaborate with on projects, how I give peer feedback to that individual or to other individuals. So this is, if you're interested in all of this in terms of proximity and its relationship to innovation, there's an interesting researcher named Ethan Bernstein from Harvard Business School that I encourage you to check out. But one of the interesting parts about his work is that he's debunked the assumption that co-location and proximity always predicts or drives collaboration and innovation, and that is not true. It's actually very much about how we design those and how we facilitate those interactions between people, the technology we use, how we use that technology, regardless of whether people are all remote or all in person or hybrid. That is the greatest predictor of innovative outputs rather than proximity alone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share six high-level tips on effective hybrid collaboration based on organizational research and evidence-based practices. And then I'm going to refer you to some rich resources on the IDEA website that I recommend you check out. So in terms of the six tips to optimize inclusive hybrid collaboration, the first is taking a remote first approach. So the most effective hybrid organizations, particularly those who've been practicing it long before 2020, take a remote first approach in their meetings and collaboration. And what that really means is that even when the majority of group members are on site or co-located together, meeting facilitators and participants will prioritize the experience of remote participants first. Practically speaking, what this means is all the whiteboarding is done primarily on a shared digital platform. For instance, the Neat board, I think, Luis, you called it, that IT shared with us, or a Google Doc where everyone can contribute rather than a physical board that only some people can access, or remote participants are given the chance to speak first before people in the room speak, or there is someone in the room always who is monitoring chat and interrupting in-person conversations to make sure there's space for people who are dialing in. And in fact, one of the highest levels of creating equal footing and inclusion is to normalize having everyone in some way dial in or sort of be a box on the screen, which some of our technology enables, so that participants are, again, they may be sharing, even if they're in the same room, they're sharing the same audio, but they are able to sort of join the room in the same way as a remote participant. So that's number one. Number two is an extension of this universal design, which comes from accessibility and disability rights movements. And really, it's the idea of, as you are designing a meeting or thinking about a collaboration experience for your team, are you thinking about the needs of everyone in the room, not just the dominant voices, not just the dominant styles of working. Distinguishing roles, number three, is really important. So in all meetings, but specifically in hybrid and remote meetings, we have multiple roles that are very important. So we have the content creator, what is going to happen in the meeting, who is coming, et cetera, the facilitator who's facilitating the actual experience, and then technical producers and chat moderators. And this should not, I think we've all learned this over time, even over the last 19 months, that this can't all fall on one person. So how are you going to designate these roles, and how what will be that distribution or the rotating kind of pattern by which you're going to have the team participate in these three distinct roles. And then number four is, I love this quote that I'll share from Randa Slim, who's a conflict mediator and facilitation expert. She says 90% of what happens in the room happens because of what we've done before. So in terms of, again, not only inclusion, and this is a best practice for any type of meeting you run, send materials in advance, the purpose, the agenda, who is on the invite list, all of those questions, the invitation language, all of that must happen in advance to create almost the psychological container for people as they come into whatever collaboration experience you've designed. I'm going to share, for number five, a process we have on the IDEA website, a process you can go through to create a communication charter on your team that really takes implicit norms that you may have about how, I log whether I'm in the office or not, and that could be different from a colleague of mine on my team, to make all of those explicit and to really surface them as a team conversation, how we're going to share in a meeting, who facilitates, again, who assembles an agenda, all of that is an important process that we encourage you to really take on as a team. And then last but not least, delineate between problems inhibiting collaboration versus personal preferences. So making sure to distinguish what an actual barrier to collaboration is versus what your preference is. For instance, maybe certain discussions don't require everyone to be on video and we can all do audio only with closed captioning. Even if we prefer, we each have different preferences as to how we would like a particular discussion to go with video or in person or in a particular mode. So just that I just encourage you to think about as a tip. So looking at some of these resources on the website, we'll put them in chat, but this isn't the Ideas in Action website, a whole page, a wealth of resources dedicated to running inclusive virtual meetings, which apply, of course, to hybrid meetings and collaboration as much as to all remote gatherings. And building off of universal design principles as well. There's a document that's a best practice document about remote meetings that was created by our incredible All Access Employee Resource Group. I think there's some members on the line, so thank you so much. But this document covers everything from, again, before getting into the meetings to actually looking at some of the features that need to be enabled to create the most accessible meeting possible when you have folks joining virtually. And then finally, we have also the communication charter exercise, which you'll find under the discussion guide section of the Ideas in Action page. And lastly, for those of you who are really interested in this idea of how do we gather, how are we going to experiment, how do we learn, I encourage you to check out two resources. One is called The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters by Priya Parker, as just an interesting book that will give you good ideas about how to creatively gather people across different work modes as we move into the future, this next new normal. Together Apart is also a podcast as well that's on that topic. And I'll just close by reiterating that we don't need to collaborate and conduct meetings in the exact same way as we did before, prior to the pandemic. And in a lot of ways, we've learned that how we collaborated in the past may not have been as inclusive as we'd like. So I just encourage you to use the new technology, new meeting formats, agenda designs, et cetera, and share with us the lessons that you learn. With that, I will pass it back.
All right, thank you, Aditi. So next up is Joanna, and Joanna's going to talk about different tools that we have available for us at the laboratory for our different work modes in determining.
Okay, Ellen, sorry, I think you were muted there.
Oh, I just wanted to, introduce you and say that you're going to talk to us about different resources that we have available for us for our new modes of work.
Yes, I do indeed. Thank you. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so yeah, thank you everyone for being here and joining us today. My name is Joanna Martinez, and I serve as the Learning and Development Specialist within the Learning and Organizational Development team that sits within HR. And our team has developed this resource page within our website that features several courses and tools and articles to support the lab community's successful transition to a hybrid work model, including a tool for supervisors to help them determine the best suited work modality for their team and a template to help them hold productive conversations with their employees about these changes. And so now that we have the technology to enhance our capacity for collaboration that IT shared with us, how do we encourage collaboration from a leadership standpoint when we have distributed teams? How do I ensure that my presence is felt and that I'm able to contribute to the team if I'm working remotely 3 days out of the week? So this page provides a library of courses and literature that touch on the broader subjects of leadership practices, many of which Aditi touched on today, in hybrid and flexible work environments. And there's other practical strategies for working in and adapting to a hybrid organization. There's also a special section for HR professionals specifically to equip them with some of the tools to support their divisions through this organization-wide change. And we recently added a Goodreads corner where you can find some research articles regarding flexible work and the future of work if you're interested in learning more about workforce trends, although I'll say that not much robust academic research has been done around this topic yet, since this is a new trend across several fields, especially in government and scientific institutions such as our own. But we will continue to update this page as new research comes up. And so in terms of programs that are designed to boost our team environment, let me just switch over. Yes, so and with regards to some programs that we are offering that are designed to boost team learning and team collaboration, we have been offering our SAFE workshop for leaders this year, and we will be offering this workshop to managers and supervisors at the top of 2022. The SAFE program was developed in partnership with the Berkeley Lab EHS office, as well as the Department of Energy's National Lab Complex. And SAFE is a 3.5-hour workshop where we explore best practices for creating and sustaining both a physically and a psychologically safe work environment. So there are elements of safety protocols that we address when there are threats to our physical or environmental safety. And through interactive challenges or through scenarios, we also work through and in some ways examine team dynamics and communication to ensure that these interactions maintain and promote a culture of psychological well-being amongst the team, especially in the face of emergencies when there may be a sense of panic. And so another program that we offer is our Core Strengths workshop. And this workshop begins with individuals within a team taking an assessment that gives them a portrait of their strengths, such as the one you see here, and how to leverage them in order to build better relationships with their colleagues and ultimately get better job results. And during the workshop, facilitators such as myself and others meet with that team to further explore these trends or these strengths together, which exposes them to one another's motives behind using certain strengths in different contexts. So it gets them to understand one another's perspective, their communication style, or just their way of being at work. And it challenges their misinterpretations of certain behaviors. So each member does get access to this Core Strengths platform seen here, which gives them insights into their own and as their colleagues' strengths profiles as well. And it advises them on how to communicate with their colleagues effectively under pressure or even under conflict. And so both the SAFE program and this Core Strengths program are quite fun and interactive, I'll say, and they're great for leaders and teams looking to boost that team collaboration, team spirit even, and strengthen their work relationships as we adapt to this new way of working together. And you can find more information about these programs at learning.lbl.gov, and we'll pop that in the chat for you. So thanks for listening, and we hope that you find all of these resources helpful in enhancing your work experience at this new work mode. And so I'll now pass it on to Ellen, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Joanna. So Diane, I think you've got some Q&A.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of questions that have come in through chat, and I have to say, Luis and Adam, we've got questions for you on technology. I love the technology that we saw. Could you talk a little bit about the AI camera and how that worked? Luis, I don't know if there's something you can demonstrate, or you can give us some more background on exactly how that technology was working, because it was pretty cool the way it was following.
Absolutely. So these cameras have technology. The one that I showed is called the Neat board, and it's an all-in-one integrated system that has a 4K camera with some intelligence to identify humans or participants in a room and be able to focus on them. Now, I'd like to add that all of those are features that are configurable. So you could have it so that it does that. You can turn that off so that it only includes the people who are in the room, so it pans and focuses on people as a group, or you can just turn it off completely. You saw it in the Neat board, but we also have it in the Neat bar on the D10, which is another integrated display. But what this camera This device right here is essentially this without the display, and this also comes with a control pad and does the same thing. So we have a couple of options. We have another option called the OWL camera, and that one sits in the middle, on the middle of the conference room table. So it gives you the view from across the, so it's almost like if you were sitting on the other side of the table in the conference room. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Luis, another one just came in. So questions about which rooms are being converted to this. Is there a list of the rooms that are already converted or will be converted?
Absolutely. So ITAB has identified about 130 plus public conference rooms and some private in that list, but we're focusing on public conference rooms, which are rooms that are accessible by lab staff and not just a specific small group. We do have a list. We're reaching out to divisions. We are meeting with the room owners to identify what the use cases, what their needs are in that room. And what I mean by that is some rooms may be big rooms that require 2 displays, whereas other rooms may require a different configuration.
Okay, that makes sense. So if somebody's got a smaller room that's not a publicly, when you're saying public, you mean one that's got a calendar that you can book it?
That's right.
Okay, so if somebody has a room that doesn't fall into that category, what should they do?
So they should put in a request to the help desk, help@lbl.gov, and we will work with them to identify their specific use case. And what some divisions have done is they work with us, they purchase the hardware, and we come in and make sure that everything works correctly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just add on, Diane?
Yeah.
So I don't think we're completely there yet, but the vision is that all of this information is going to be in Google Calendar. And so, so one of the things that you may not have seen, because it all came out, most of it came out while we were actually in pandemic, and you might not have been looking for conference rooms, is that when you go into more options and try to look for a room, right, it's defaulting, first of all, to where I work. So it knows 50B is of interest. I can set how many people do I need to be able to put into the room. And I can say, I need video and audio in that room. And then you can see that for the rooms that are configured, you immediately get that number, the number of people who can fit, the fact that it's updated, and some information about what technology is in the room. So you'll see all that information in Google Calendar as we go forward.
Adam, can you just stay back on there and go over those icons once again?
Sure, sorry.
Those were pretty cool. It's a way to find a room. And this came out in the pandemic, so we missed it.
Yeah, we've been parts of it were there before, but we've been building it out, and Google's been adding new things too. So this first icon is how many people do you need for the conference room? So you can set that there, and then is it equipped with video, and is it equipped with a traditional telephone? And I can look for that all of, in any of the buildings.
Very cool. People are liking that one in chat. And Andrea put in a list too, the old comments. Is that going to be updated, that list then?
I'm standing in front of the camera, so I can't see what the list is, but we do have a website where we keep a list of, and Andrea, it must be the same one, the go.lbl.gov/CR for conference rooms, and it's the profile pages for the conference rooms that we have identified. As we upgrade conference rooms, we're also upgrading that, and we're also updating the calendar resource to include what technology we're putting in there.
Very cool. Lots of fun. I can do a personal testimonial for Darren and Luis and Adam on this, is that it was an easy process to upgrade some of our conference rooms. So thank you. We already had the screen, and we just needed that part that Luis showed you. And so, it's not that difficult. Yeah, we just had to order that part. And now we're going to have some cool rooms. So thank you again for helping us with that. Melanie, I have a question for you that has come up. It's about the telework catalog. So no, you cannot, I'm assuming, Adam, I'll just assume here, you cannot have a neat board usually at your home, right? Melanie, but what if somebody wants equipment for homework that isn't in the catalog besides the neat board?
Got it. So yeah, so if anything that's not in the catalog, some of the things are available by just consulting with the EHS Ergo team. So the email that I gave before, the ergo@lbl.gov, is the best way to reach out. I will tell you, and I can put it in the chat when I'm done chatting, is that there is actually a process that procurement has set up for people to request items that they maybe are in the Staples catalog that they'd like to have added. So I can give you that. Just know that, you know, there are some limitations that, you know, you can't buy things on your own and get reimbursed. There are certain things that are just not able to be accessible for people for telework. But we're happy to work with folks and look for creative solutions of how we can get people comfortable and safe at home.
Okay, thanks, Melanie. Joanna, I had a question. People were interested in the safe workshops and the core strength. I believe, is that what you called the other one?
Yes, core strengths.
Okay. Can you do those as a group?
You can, yeah. They're actually designed to do as a group.
Okay. And is it also individual? I mean, do you have sessions both ways?
Yes, well, no sessions both ways, but the core strengths assessment can be available for an individual if they're just interested in assessing themselves and learning about themselves.
Okay. But you could also do that one as a group then as well.
Yes, the workshop as a group. Yeah.
Sounds fun. Okay. How large is a group?
We ask for a minimum of 10 participants, okay, and no more than 40.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Aditi, I have a question for you. If we could briefly, we've got a minute or two left here. Can you talk about, Aditi, how lab employees can demonstrate equity in this new brave new world?
Sure. Excuse me. I mean, so I just want to define equity first, which is, we define it as opportunity parity. We define it as the outcome we achieve if we create a workplace or team environments where we remove opportunity gaps, institutional bias, barriers to professional and social success. So what I would say is, in terms of how can each of us demonstrate and role model equity in this next chapter of how we work, really starts with slowing down and asking some critical questions of how we work now. So, and I encourage you to start small. You know, we can look at some of the big things about performance decision, things like that happen on our teams, and that's great, really important, but also the smaller practices. You know, how have we been meeting? Who is heard most in our teams? Whose ideas actually, you know, generate or move forward and whose don't? What forums have actually worked for us in terms of creating equitable airtime versus less, you know, dominated by, again, certain styles or certain voices. And then from there, you can also just identify what those pain points have been, do a retrospective now, so that then you can start identifying some of these practices. They're from the IDEA website, some of what I shared, but and some of the technology, for instance, just trying out what works for you, that creates more space for different voices to be heard and to contribute fully, because ultimately that is what our goal is. So that's where I encourage you to start, and then we keep building from there.
Thank you, Aditi. And Janie in chat pointed out that equity includes something as simple as turning on live transcript when you're doing a Zoom call so that everybody can participate. So that's great. Thank you. Adam, I see you put something in here in chat about the phone system. Can you give us the high level view of what that looks like? That looks really interesting.
Yeah, we've been we're finishing up the initial part of that project to replace the lab's telephone system, and when we're done with that, which is really truly coming any day now, at least this first phase, most people at the laboratory will be able to have their lab extension ring on either a special app on their phone that will distinguish it, right? It's not just forwarding to your phone, but will actually be clearly coming from LBL, and you'll be able to make and receive calls there, as well as on your desktop computer. That's in addition to having a physical phone if you choose at the laboratory at your normal workspace. So that's definitely something that has been a long time coming, and certainly would have been nice at the beginning of the pandemic. But we're getting there. It's a big job, and so for many people at the laboratory, it's sort of a subset of people that were on a particular technology. They'll have access to that before the end of the calendar year.
Very cool. So for me to picture this, if I'm doing a desk share arrangement, there might be a set on the desk, right? But it's not going to be to me specifically. I can choose to have that call appear on my desk set.
That's true too. So we use multiple lines on a single desk set, which can distinguish on the desk sets themselves. So you can see who's ringing who. But maybe even even more easily, right? I mean, your phone will ring for your extensions if that's how you choose to do it, and you can make and receive calls from there, your cell phone rather. And so it could just be that your cell phone is your dominant device at that point.
Cool. All right. Well, that takes us through questions we have. Ellen, can I turn it back to you for some closing thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everybody who was able to attend today. As I said, we'll go ahead and have this posted on a couple of different sites, Future of Work and The Way We Work. We'll have an Elements article going out. And I also really want to thank the teams of our representatives here who presented the different tools today and all the work that you and your teams have done over the pandemic really to get us to a point where we could share what I think are a series of really impressive tools for the laboratory community. So thank you and have a good rest of your day, and talk to you at the next Brown Bag. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.